I remember in 1991 when I was given the book, The Predatory Female, and I did a review, a couple actually, part 1 and part 2 review of that book. And I remember I had this strange feeling the book is very funny, right? And it's have you ever read it, The Predatory Female? You ever read that? It's pretty funny book.
I don't think so.
I'll send you the PDF. It's pretty good. But
I used to read a lot of books back in the day. How long ago was that?
It was published about 1990. Something like that.
I don't remember it.
And some guy in Tokyo gave it to me. And I got it, and it was about this guy who was getting divorced, who was divorced, and he was really resentful about his divorce, but he was very funny. It's really funny. I was crying in some parts of it because his examples are just, of course, it's like the ultimate cynical. It's like that. It's like, when you go to a comedy guy, and then he's just like, I was on my way here, I got robbed. He's it's just a deadpan, but everything is negative.
So the whole book was about this guy just getting the jelly crushed out of him.
Oh yeah, just getting crushed, and with the most evil possible, just a hammer at all times, claw hammer in the face.
Right.
And he had some great examples. One of them was, don't let the camel, he was saying, don't let a woman live in your house. He said, don't let the camel get its head in the tent.
I've been saying that for years.
No way.
Yeah, well, that's a real, that's a
thing in the desert, yeah.
That's a real, Saudi Arabian thing, right?
Right.
Don't let the...
Right.
I've been saying that for years. I didn't know if that was in that book. So maybe I did read that book. For some reason...
I probably gave it to you back in the day.
Yeah, because that's been in my toolbox for 20 years.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a great concept because the thing is, the camel, once his head goes in the tent, he freaks out and he starts swinging his head around and he just pulls the whole tent up, and then everything just gets fucked up. That's why the camel, he wants it to look in the tent, right? But once he gets in there, it's all dark and it goes around his eyes and he freaks out, and then he just totally just destroys the whole tent.
Oh, I thought the implication was that once the camel got his head in the tent, the rest of it's going to follow.
No, he's going to destroy it.
And he's going to get in there, and then it's the camel's tent.
Oh, yeah, right.
He's going to shit and do his camel fucking business. It's no longer your tent once the camel gets in there.
I think the thing is, it's strewn all over the desert. Your belongings will be strewn all over the desert. He's just going to create havoc. And I took a camel safari along the border of Pakistan and rode camels, and I remember they are like that. We were riding the camels, and it was I tell you, it was so fucking awesome. If you ever get a chance to do a camel safari, it's just the best because, well, one, they're really tall. It's really different. I'm a horse guy. We used to have horses when I was a kid. We didn't have any money, but we had horses because the horses were so cheap back then. Even in Southern California, you know how much it was, the monthly fee for the horse at the stable? $75. That was it. You could have a horse for $75 a month. It was amazing. And right next to the house too. We had the horse right there. And the horse was free. We got the horse for free. My sister got the horse. And we just had this horse, and so I used to ride the horse a lot. And then you just feed it salt and hay and stuff. It's pretty easy. Got to put on new shoes on it, things like that. The horse got pregnant, had a baby. That was amazing. But anyway, so back to the camels. The camel is kind of similar to a horse, riding a camel. It's a little different. There's a few different things. It's quite tall, acts a little different. And I was riding it during mating season, and we were male. I was on a male camel, which usually you ride female camels, and the male camels are more radical. They do all kinds of weird shit, and especially during mating season, when they see another camel. I don't know if I talk about this, but they see another camel even 2 miles away in the desert, and then they out of his mouth, imagine your tongue could fill up with air and become a big balloon out of your mouth. Imagine it blowing a big balloon out like bubble gum. And then this big thing of air, big balloon comes out of his mouth. And then he goes, he starts doing this and then making these noises and then pulling as hard as he can towards the female camel.
Right.
And so, it's really hard to stop him. They're really stubborn, super stubborn. Camels are not like horses. And then the other thing was funny. We were riding the camels, and I looked down and there's all these little crosses along the desert. And I said, "What are those crosses for?" Because I thought it was a religious thing. He said, "Oh, that's all the foreigners who fell off and died, off camels and died."
Wow.
Yeah, and there was a ton of them. And so I guess it's pretty dangerous. I guess. I mean, danger.
And they were all Christian.
After they died, they were.
Okay.
Yeah, because they were Western. So
right.
probably the Indians thought this is Western guy.
Okay.
Make a cross, right?
Right.
But like it was a way of showing respect for this tourist who died, right? Anyway, we the camel is pretty radical, pretty wild beast, right? So yeah, no, he gets in his head in 10, and that was a good lesson, and that was a good book. But that book, I remember reading that book, and I remember thinking, this guy is an old, because at the time, I mean, my life was great. I was young. I was fucking, I felt handsome. I felt like girls liked me. I had traveled. I had traveled the world. I'd already been to 25 countries before I was 25 years old. I was like so fucking happy with myself. I was like fucking every day was exciting. I was making money. I had figured it out. I had overcome all these challenges in my childhood. Like I felt like life was good. My basic thing was life was good, and girls wanted to give me the pussy. They wanted my dick. That's what I thought. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, fucking A. All these girls fucking, travel the world, go to different countries, fuck being back home, fuck being under all these rules. Like, my life felt full of light and full of excitement and colors and smells and sounds. And that's how I felt. Kind of like being at the carnival or something, as opposed to a guy who's all depressed. Feels like everything's great. I felt the exact opposite.
Right.
And so when I read this guy's, pretty cynical book about women, I remember thinking like, ooh, like I don't want to be like that. So I thought, well, the one thing I should do with this book, the reason why I read it over and over is I said, this guy's cynical because he got fucked over. Because he got hurt, because he got fucked over. That's why he's so cynical. So I don't want to be like that. So I'm going to listen to his advice. I'm not going to look at him as a freak. I'm going to say, what did he do to get so resentful? And that was getting married. And the divorce courts.
But do you think do you think that he always stayed resentful? I wonder.
Well, I since found out some things about him, actually. Let's see. No, that was Harry Brown. No, I never met him, but the author, he was
Harry Brown wrote The Morality Trap, right? Yeah.
He wrote a
different author.
He wrote like another book I read a lot at the time, which was How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World.
Right. Which was about the morality trap. I got the title
That's right.
wrong.
That's right. The morality trap, and there was the group trap, and all the different traps inside the. Oh, it was. Yeah, it's a book you should just read every year just to kind of brush up on. But I read those two books, and the Reverend Shannon. That wasn't his real name, obviously, but I eventually found I got a signed copy of the book. I told so many people about the book that one of my friends worked for American Airlines and in Tokyo, in Narita, and he actually worked with the guy because he said he was an airline captain, and he was. He actually wasn't a captain. Actually, he was using a pseudonym and a fake title, but he worked for American Airlines with my friend, and so he gave me a signed copy, and it was pretty cool. So that's the closest I ever got to that guy, but it had a huge influence because I thought, I don't want to be a resentful old guy. Like, I want to be a happy fucking guy. So I'm going to take the good and I'm going to avoid the bad. That was my decision. I won't let the camel in the tent. I'll take his advice on that one.
Right.
So I won't get married. I'll have fun. I'll have relationships. But I'm not going to I'm not going to put myself in a situation where all my numbers are riding on one number.
So maybe like red pill rage is like it's all like everybody's experience of that might be different, or like the sort of level of that rage, or the sort of how long that rage stays with you. I guess is like depending on where you like. At what point do you discover it? Like, are you finding it like before you read the book? Or are you the guy that can write the book? Like, is it like, like you can sort of like have some realization about what's really going on, and like you can learn from the mistakes of others, or you could also be the guy that just gets completely steamrolled too.
Right.
And like
Right. And
it's sort of like you're going to have a different, like, it might take longer for some guys to get over the resentment and the rage, and some guys just might be defined by the rage.
Well, I think too.
Right? Or they love it. They love.
Oh, they love the anger. Yeah.
Well, which is like.
Let's go away from that noise. I think for myself, I think that what do you call it? I was like, I think for myself, I was kind of like, I want to learn from others. To answer your question, I don't want to be the guy who is that crazy guy, like who's angry. Now, it's not a crazy guy, but it looks like a crazy guy to other people, right? So I thought, I'm going to be the one who learns from others. I'm not going to be the angry, bitter guy by himself, muttering to himself when he's old. So I'm not going to fall into that. And at the same time, because I was so young when I learned this stuff, I realized that you have responsibility. So, like the Reverend Shannon, he's like all angry and everything, but I could see that it was his own actions and lack of knowledge that put him in that position. Like, like if you buy like, let's say you buy something that's not a good deal, like an extended warranty on electronics or something, which is well known as not being a good investment, right? If you buy it, of course you're going to be angry about it, but the smart thing to do is to know better, and then not to buy it, right? It's your responsibility. Of course, people are going to trick you in your life. You're going to buy things that are not a good deal, not a good investment. But your job is to know as much as possible, because after you buy, society only gives you so many passes where you can complain, because it's your job as a consumer to keep up on things. So, it's your job as a consumer to know that it's not very smart to do that, and that you have to be wise. You have to make smart decisions. So when I read that book, that was what I decided. I'm going to be the guy who doesn't have to worry about all that shit, because I'm not going to fall into that trap. And in fact, I never did get married. I've never been married. And that book had a huge influence on me. And the reason why, my own reason, is that I think Reverend Shannon, his mistake in the book was he could not see that the pain that he went through, the pain that Reverend Shannon went through, was not because of the woman. The reason why he went through the pain is because of the legal system. So the legal system handed the woman essentially a weapon, and then she uses it against the guy, right? And he saw it as her fault. I see it more as the legal system. I saw it, and not the current legal system. I'm talking about 1991. Things have changed a lot since 1991 in the family courts. And I think that if you give anybody an opportunity to make selfish choices and then to punish people, they're going to do it, and men or women. And so I think what he misunderstood is that basically at that time, all the chips were in the woman's favor in family court. So once you went into marriage, you were going to go through the grinder if she wanted to. There was no, no matter how good a guy you were, no matter how much money you made, no matter how good a father you were, no matter how hard you tried, no matter how much you loved her, you loved your children, it didn't matter. She could fucking cornhole you in court and portray you as a bad guy and get full custody. And that happened all the time.
That's changed a little bit for the better, right?
Oh, it's changed a lot. And
that's good.
And this is one thing I really, I think a lot of, I would say to you as a listener right now, do not believe old information, especially old angry information.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that you are fully protected. Okay, I'm not saying like go out and like you're not in a field of daisies prancing around with a unicorn. Okay, don't get me wrong. But a lot of the narratives you read online, you hear online on YouTube, are old information. And things are changing very quickly. Now, it depends on which state you're in. But there are a lot of states now where they basically recognize men and women as equal in court when it comes to children. And they don't favor the woman. It depends on the state. It really depends on the state. But it's all going that way. It's all going that more equal seeing men and women as equal in court. And again, it's any of these tectonic changes don't happen overnight. And it is extremely difficult to have a balanced perspective when you talk to somebody who has very real pain. And in fact, their life was ruined by something that used to happen. You know, in the old days, there used to be people that would go to prison for like 20 years for like things that are now legal, you know, like smoking weed and stuff, you know. And so, you know, don't go telling those guys who had their life totally ruined in prison that things have changed, because they don't want to hear it, you know. And people have difficulty changing. You have to respect that. You know, when I first went to Japan, I came back and there was this old doctor that I knew very well, and I met him, and he said, "What are you doing? I haven't seen you in a long time, Paul. What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm living in Japan. I'm teaching English." And then my friend that knew him well, one of his buddies, same age, they were like very old. They were like 70s. He goes, "No." And the guy goes, "Japanese!" And he started like going on this total rampage. And then later on, I found out that guy was a doctor. He was a young doctor at Pearl Harbor at the day of the attack. And so he saw a lot of his friends killed, and he never got over it. He was always very angry about it. And I think the difficulty in these kind of shifts, you know, today we're allies with the Japanese. And I think people that like see the wartime narrative are very few now. Most people have passed away. But at the same time as things have changed, you got to give respect to people who lived through the other era. So I think that's my message on that one, is that there are a lot of men who have very, very, very deep wounds because of the system in the past. And you have to respect that. You can't just say, "Oh, things have changed." It's like, well, things fucking didn't change back then, and my life is ruined now. So I respect their experience.
Yeah, you can respect it, but still, though, you gotta you.
There's a line.
There's a line. It's all you can. I don't know if you can respect. You can respect it to a point, but the thing is that in the end, like, people have to have responsibility for their own anger. It's like at some point, it's like the problem with it is it's human nature to be attached to your own anger. People fucking love it. And so that's the problem. It's like you might have an initial reason to be angry, but then after a while, that anger is, you know, if it's used to good effect at some point, but I guess at some point, it's not good. It's like if somebody's angry about something and it happened yesterday, it makes sense. You start looking crazy when you're ranting and raving about something that happened 20 years ago.
Right.
Right? And then the guy goes into the grave angry. And it's like his whole life was that. And then you're like, that guy was an idiot.
Right.
So so at some point, at some point, everybody's got to recognize, okay, I went to the meat grinder, I made a mistake, whatever it is, but at some point, you have to take some type of, it's not her fault. At some point, you know what I'm saying? Or you look,
right.
That's when you start looking, oh, that's just a crazy, angry guy, you know, barking into, you know, right to the bitter end, you know, and that was his life.
Right.
And that's crazy.
Right. And
But but where does the craziness start and begin and end? It's sort of a weird.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like.
And young people see that. Not this generation, but in the future, people see that and they're like, they look at it and the young people were like, yeah, he went through that, but that ain't the fucking case anymore. So get over it, kind of thing. And then the old guy's like, and here's one thing I've learned from being older. Is when I was younger and I heard a story about this Pearl Harbor doctor, I would have said something like this. Dave, this is interesting. I would have said, he was a doctor. He was at Pearl Harbor. This is not a maybe. He has the paperwork. He lived there. He was there that day. And he helped many, many dying men who didn't make it. I would have given him a pass totally. But today, I will give him a pass at some level, but at the same time, here's what I always didn't know when I was younger, is that one man's narrative is not the story. And there are a lot of people who were at Pearl Harbor who don't think the way he thinks. And would, if he went, I can guarantee you this, if he goes to a veterans get-together, veterans of Pearl Harbor, every guy will not have the same opinion about the Japanese today that he has. Now, that being said, this is even more interesting. I went to I got invited when I was in Japan. The Ministry of Finance was sponsoring a group of POWs from Japanese internment camps during the wartime. And I went there and I listened to it. It was like a 2 or 3 hour long presentation. And it was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. But I got to say that those guys who lived through the internment camp, they were probably 70% still angry and 30% peace, love, and unicorns. So I guess it depends on the level of pain. So for those guys that for those guys that were in those camps, and there's a movie about it. What is that movie called? Unshaken, Unforgiven, there's something like that. I can't think of the name of the movie. There was a movie based on the guys that I met. And I never saw the movie, by the way. But I met the real people and I shook their hands, took pictures. It was awesome. And there was a sense of forgiveness even for these guys. Now, of course, it's been a long time. So we're talking about 1942, 1943, 1944, 1945. And this was, 5 years ago. So 2015. So how many years is that, right? 55, 65, 75, 85, 95, 105, 115, 70 years, right? So these guys were in their 90s, obviously, or late 80s. Because a lot of soldiers were in their teens. And I think a lot of even them had, even though they were, obviously, it was just the most miserable thing. But in the end, one of our challenges in life is to overcome these type of things, and to be able to put even the most difficult things into perspective. And my message here, what I'd like to end on, is that as a man, you have deep resources. You have very, very deep resources. So when I say something, I might say it that sounds to you like I'm saying it without thinking, just, you need to overcome this, or, you get over this, But what I'm not saying that at all. I understand how difficult it is. But I also understand that you only have one life. And you're going to be gone soon. And everything will be for naught. I would say, no matter what it takes, no matter how difficult the road, you need to update your thinking and to see the world a different way, and to break out of that prison of anger, to break out of that prison that maybe you created. You were part of it. There was some joy you got out of being in that prison. There's some kind of a victim. There was some kind of identity, right? There's an identity with this type of thing. If you look at the men that were in the internment camps, they essentially their identity, and then they have a very popular movie now because of their identity as victims of war crimes, essentially. And that is a powerful thing. But it's not, it may look good on paper to young guys, like you got a movie and everything, but in the end, after the movie, you go home by yourself. And you're sitting there alone in your place. And if you're still super angry, you're the one that's paying the price. And also, you're not fulfilling the true path that you're on. You've been sidetracked into a silo and are not living the life that you were meant to live. You were not meant to live a life as in just pure anger over some situation. You were born with the wisdom and capacity to overcome even the most difficult of circumstances. And that's my spirit that I make I make Ronin Man, is I have been through things. I have been through some very, very difficult things in my life. And yet I am still optimistic about people, about even the legal system. And I tell you that this is truly a message of hope, is that if you feel that you don't have the capacity, if you feel like you've kind of like you've cast your lot and that there is no changing, I guess at some point you have a decision to make. Are you going to believe that untrue narrative? Or are you going to face the prison that you've built for yourself? That only you, and you're alone in that prison. And the prison was caused by real circumstances that were very difficult. But the anger was caused by that. But the prison is of your own making. Being seen as a person in prison gives you a sense of identity, gives you a sense of like, this is what's real, and it gives you a sense of something. There's something you get from this. If you can find out what it is that you're getting from this prison I'm using prison as an example. If you can get to the heart of what you are gaining from that, you will realize that gift, it's not the ultimate gift. It's fool's gold. It's fool's fucking gold. The real gold is the man who is able to overcome everything. And I believe that men are astute, incredibly intelligent. I mean, you just have to look at how smart dogs are to know how smart you are. Dogs are very smart. And when you're trying to outsmart an animal, let's say you have an animal eating your tulips or something, or eating your oranges or whatever, and you're trying to outsmart, you ever find yourself in a battle with like mosquitoes or something, right? You realize how incredibly difficult it is sometimes to win a battle against another living thing because they're so fucking smart, right? You are 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times that. And you have the capacity to overcome any obstacle in your life. I believe in you. I believe you have the capacity. Even if you've never done it before, even if you've fallen in the depths of despair, even if you threw away and drove away everybody in your life, you have the capacity to not only change, but change in a very attractive way and to allow a whole new vision of life to come before you. And somewhat to let the sunlight in to that room. And no matter how much of Gandhi you are, there's going to be still one part of your life that this will be useful for. So I'm speaking to everybody here. Everybody has one part of your life where you kind of have just decided that you're going to hold on to something. And I really recommend that you think that again. there's a lot of freedom in letting it go. There's a lot of freedom. And opening your eyes to the new world. I look outside today, it's a beautiful day out there. It's fucking fall. I'm in New Jersey. I'm with a great friend. I feel good. I slept good last night. I have so many loving friends. I love you guys listening. Like, I get so much fucking excitement. That's why I make these episodes. That's why I do it. I really enjoy this. This is what I'm living for right now. It's like fucking awesome to me. I love your questions. I love your pain. I love the difficult things you're going through. I love working with you through it. And for me, why do I love it? It's because I do the same thing to myself. So it helps me to understand myself. And your kind of feedback from my experience and your stories and my stories together, we're building a deeper understanding of things. And that's what I love to do. I like to get a deeper understanding, because the deeper understanding is what allows you to move on. It's not being Gandhi. It's a combination of, you don't become Gandhi because you want to. You become Gandhi because you have a different set of glasses on and you see things differently.
Well, and
like Chuck C said, a new pair of glasses.
And not everybody can be Gandhi. The whole world can't be like that. It's like a lot of us are just fucking average guys, right? So it's like, at least recognize. I mean, you got to look at someone like Gandhi, whatever. Like, what's the message? It's a little bit like, if you're an average guy, or most average people, you get angry. But the thing is, don't stay angry. Like, don't stay angry forever. Because if you stay angry forever, it's your own fault. Like, you got to, like, some point, you got to accept some responsibility for your own anger.
That's it.
That's it. You know, you can't, if you stay like that, like, at what point do you just become an angry shithead? You're not the angry shithead on day 1, but is it day 9, day 10? You got to recognize that.
Year 30, yeah.
Year 25. It's at some point, everybody like agrees. Okay, angry shithead. I don't care what he's angry about anymore.
Right.
It doesn't matter. And the problem with it then is, like, people know that people are like that. Like, people know that that's a human characteristic of not just being angry, but the hard part is that what people don't realize is that they love it. They're attached to it. It makes them feel good. That's why they don't let go of it. There's something inside of them. It actually takes effort, and they don't do it, or it like feeds on itself, and it turns into all kinds of bad. This is like where hate movements come from. It's like, and they're easily manipulated, and they make mistakes. It's like all you got to do is find a bunch of angry people, and you can get them marching behind you. They're idiots. You know what I mean? They're easily manipulated. The whole thing of like politics of grievance, they're knuckleheads. 'Cause they're easily manipulated because of their anger. People like, and so somebody who isn't, you can be a guy who's not angry and find 100 angry guys and fucking get your torches and let's go fucking burn the place down.
Right.
Because they're idiots.
Right.
You know?
The thing I will say,
they're not idiots. They're not idiots. They're
stuck in a.
There's idiot's a strong word. It's like, it's not like it's completely illogical. No, because it has an original cause.
It has an original cause, and in this case, the original cause was a feeling of love for a woman, or a feeling of caring for a child. It starts from such a beautiful thing. That's why I will say I definitely don't agree with idiots, because we're talking about somebody who was fucked over on a very human level. Somebody who trusted another person, who loved, love and trust and belief. These are like the highest values, right? And so these guys, you trusted, you believed, you loved somebody. You cared about somebody. And then to be betrayed on that, it's so fucking painful.
Yeah.
It's so fucking difficult. So I will say that, but I got to say though, at some point, and like you say, I don't know what that day is. I don't know what that point is, but there is a point where you become something else.
Right.
Even if it is a real thing, even if it was a very, very, very real thing. And so watch out for that. Watch out that you don't fall past the line, because the reason why it's such a tragedy for somebody, let's say you loved somebody, you cared about somebody, you wanted to raise a child, you wanted to share, you wanted to grow, you wanted to build, and then you were just absolute guillotine evil, treated just like you were like loving, and the other person was Jeffrey Dahmer.
You were betrayed.
You were totally betrayed at the deepest level, and lied about, and absolutely tortured, essentially.
And that's where ultimately that's where real hatred comes from, right?
Well, I think there's two ways you can go. One, you can be totally destroyed and kill yourself. So anybody who's listening to this, you didn't go down that road, because that's what most guys do when they reach this kind of situation. So this is really a positive message, actually, when I think about it, because most guys who undergo that level of deceit and manipulation and sadism, essentially, really, when they brush against evil, most people can't face it, and they can't face their own mistakes, and they do take their own life. So anybody on this podcast, not saying everybody went through that level of deception, but a lot of guys did.
Yeah.
And you're still here. So you are essentially, I would say you are a perfect candidate for becoming a Gandhi type guy, because you didn't choose the other route. You chose, I'm going to somehow try to keep going. I'm going to try to figure it out. And my message is that not only can you figure it out, but you can take it as essentially a turning point where you do become a loving person who understands that things are evil. The evil things can happen. But you at the same time, you see the sunlight. You realize that you somehow made it through it. You're willing to let it go. As painful as it was, you're like, I'm willing to move on, and I'm not going to be one of these guys who essentially,
it's kind of like, if you're angry and bitter forever, then she ultimately wins.
But I don't think that's motivation. No. And that's not the motivation, because that's an anger motivation. It's not even, I don't care if people win. That's the thing. This is an important point. I gave away. Here's where I am at. When I think of the most difficult situation with a woman, I actually want her to win. I want her to have a good life. I hope that she has a good life. Like, I don't want to win. I want us both to win.
No, but what I meant is that.
But that's a key thing, though, because
but what I'm saying is that if you stay angry and bitter and you let that anger consume you and destroy you, that is sort of ultimately, like, just in terms of conflict.
Yeah, but I think that's I think that we are way beyond conflict now.
Okay.
I think this is this was true. This is kind of the thinking, that it's like the winning thing, right? I think in the end is like, you can lose everything and you can win.
Right.
You can win even if you lose everything, because this concept I'm talking about is so fucking powerful, and everybody around you will know that you won, even though you lost everything on paper. People know. People will respect you, because they'll be like, wow, the power of that motherfucking guy. He won. And the thing is, the person who supposedly won on paper will also fucking know it too, because they can't take this away from you. This is like deep inside of you.
Right.
What I'm talking about.
I mean, maybe it's that old cliche, the ultimate revenge is a well-lived life.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
Like, it's sort of like, in the end, that's, it's like you hear about your whoever, it's like, oh, they're happy, living a good life. It's like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And ultimately,
you're actually happy for them, because you're like, well, everything you've moved on, and you're like, I hope they have a good life. Like, because if I hope they don't have a good life, I am basically not over it, because, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I do this pretty quickly. It might take me a year or two, but eventually I get to the point where I'm like, I want the best for everybody. Like, I want the best for them. I want the best for people in my family. Like, I want them to somehow figure out their own ways, and I'm untouchable.
So maybe it's about a year. Like, if you're trying to figure out how long it takes. That's what I give myself.
You always say a year.
I always say...
I don't know what the period is, but...
Yeah, I've always said a year. Like, for any... Like the worst kind of betrayal and the worst kind of barbecued heart, the worst, like, I'm going to kill myself, I can't believe this happened to me. Give yourself 1 year and see how you feel. You know, like, go through the Christmas, go through the summer. I almost feel like you have to go through every season of the year in that new state. But then when you get to the next year and you're going over the same ground again, carrying the same fucking bullshit in your heart, you got to look at yourself.
Right.
I think. Give it 1 year.
The only thing I'll add to that, I think a year is it's good to have a specific number. The only thing I will say is that my most difficult challenge was recently. And at a year, I was in a very much better place. But my brains were still scrambled. And I could not see it myself. I would tell you, if you asked me, I'd say, I'm doing better, I'm doing this. But I didn't really believe it yet. So I didn't feel it in my heart yet, you know? And whereas now, at this point, I totally understand it. Yeah. So you might have the progress and not feel it yet.
You're right. I think a lot of people like that. First, you get your head around it. It takes a while for the heart to, it's sort of like you can sort of accept things intellectually, but it takes a while emotionally. Yeah, you're right. Because it takes time. Like,
there's two parts.
I might think I'm over something, but I'll still have a nightmare about it 10 years later. So it's like the subconscious is a little bit slower, but you got to consciously get your head around it. I think at least intellectually, in some way, rally.
Yeah.
I guess like having that thing about a year, like at least it forces you not to be like, at least not ranting and raving the same bullshit a year from now. Because that's the problem with it, is that sometimes when you're angry, if you don't actually try to address it at all, it can turn into something else. So like whatever you're ranting and raving about 6 months from now, a year from now, may not even be true. Like it can morph into something else.
No, but
it's a life of its own.
I think the thing is both of us are telling the truth, but the difference is I'm talking about a different level of pain that you're talking about. You know, when I had a dream about, almost 2 years ago, I had a dream that my child was in a volcano, and like there was flames everywhere, and I couldn't do anything to help her. You know, she was just there, and like I couldn't reach her, I couldn't help her, and it was a dream, and I woke up, and it was just like fire and brimstone. It was kind of like all those ideas of hell and stuff, and I just, that feeling was just that helplessness that was just so deep. So I think it just depends. It depends on what you're talking about. I'm not saying what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about a different level of pain. So whatever you're going through, it's kind of interesting, because when I think of Dave, what he's talking about a different thing, and that is very true what he's talking about. He's talking about politics. He's talking about the fence in your yard, the tree falling on your house, your car, like your job, the smaller things. I'm talking about the deepest pain.
Right.
So you have to understand where you are.
Right.
And both things, one of them is truly motivated by a desire to do good, and by like your deepest fears, really. And the other one is just like more of like just a standard anger. So I think that that's what's really interesting about this discussion is I didn't tell you what I was thinking about, right? But I think you can use this episode really no matter what you're going through, really, because both are true and both work depending on what you're working on, right?
Right. I mean, it sounds like what you're talking a little bit about is like at first, like there could be a lot of combination of emotions like anger and grief. So in a way, like you can have both, and ultimately, if you get a handle on your anger, you could be aggrieved or have a grievance or have real grief, and it's real, and it's like something that's not bad. It's like actually something you should talk about, and you can't deny it. And it's like that's it, like that's also pretty normal, and it's like that's right out of the, not to be biblical, because I'm not me, I've never been to church my whole life, but that's right there in the Bible somewhere, something like blessed are thee that mourn. There's like something about that. It's not like blessed are thee that are angry. I guess there's righteous anger, but you know what I mean? There's something there's something positive about anger for a while. But in the end, it's sort of like when the anger goes away, if like there's grief, like nobody's really critical of that.
I think too, though, there's a time limit on everything, and you need to be able to deal. You need to take responsibility. If you have undergone a betrayal at the deepest level, you need to know that you need to mourn and you need to grieve.
Right.
Because if you do not do that, then you set yourself up to be something different. And I'm gonna tell you a story. It's very interesting. When I was in high school, one of my classmates, she was 16, and she got a Volkswagen Bug. She got a red Bug convertible, which was the coolest car at the school I went to for girls. It was the cutest car. It was what year was it? 1981. And that was the coolest car. Red Bug convertible in Southern California. And she was going on the freeway on the on-ramp, and she flipped it because she was going too fast. And she was beheaded and killed. 16 years old, one of my classmates. Her dad, I had read that he never overcame his grieving. And, like I'd heard that was the rumor in my town. And it was crazy because I went back to buy a car, and I went to the Volkswagen dealership, and I was looking at a GTI back in 83. And I was just looking at the car, and I was like trying to decide, I think it was 84 now. Yeah, I bought it in 83, but I bought it in 84. So it's like a last year's model kind of thing, like the last ones. And I was looking at it, and this guy was helping me with the car. And while he was helping me with the car, he started telling me about his daughter. And I realized it was that girl's father. It was fucking true. And I remember thinking, like, he was telling me, like, some customer about his daughter dying. And I was like, fuck, this is so inappropriate. This is, like, so fucking weird. And I had heard the rumor. He never got over it. And I think that, when you undergo these type of things, and losing a child or whatever, I think that you, I don't know where this falls on this thing, but I know that you need to somehow overcome everything. Like, no matter what fucking happens, I believe our job as humans is to somehow overcome it. So I disagree with your thing about the mourning and grieving. That father was, now obviously you can't say he's wrong or anything. I mean obviously, yeah. But it's one of these things. And he's still like that, actually, because his son one of my classmates became super famous and wrote a book, and so it's in there. But he never changed. But I think that for myself, no matter what happens to me, I choose to overcome it somehow. Like, literally, no matter what happens, because, in the end, I'm going to die, and hopefully I'm going to live a long time. So if let's say I live to 90, probably all my friends will be dead. Everybody that loved me, everybody that I know would be dead. And I could look at that as, a very terrible thing, or I could look at it as, I'm glad that I lived long enough, that I was the last one, right? There's many ways to look at life. I mean, in the end, life is a tragedy. It's a very difficult. The things I'm saying, I say them as if they're nothing, but the reason why I say them as if you need to overcome is because that's the way I think. Life is short. You got to fucking overcome it somehow. You need to find a way. You need to find a fucking way. And if you're not getting the answers from somebody around you, you need to look for some more fucking wisdom, because don't let it drag you down. Because in the end, even if it's a child, even if it's whatever the fuck it is, all your money, all your fame, all your health, your son, whatever the fuck it is, you need to find a way to move on. And to, not to move on, that's the wrong word, to transcend You need to find a way to transcend things, because that is, I think that's the ultimate goal, is to gain wisdom and to transcend everything, no matter what hits us. I really think that's the goal. And same with the guy who gets in, for example, gets robbed and gets shot and then he's paralyzed. He needs to find it somehow. This high school fucking football star has to find a way to make peace with it somehow. You got to find a way, no matter how difficult it is.
Right.
You got to find a way. And the thing is that the answers are out there, but they're not going to come from the average guy. They're going to come from somebody who went through that same difficult thing. So be careful. Look for someone who understands what you're talking about. If it's a very deep level of grief or it's one of these really difficult things, don't blow other people off, but just realize that they don't have that experience. And you have to find somebody who has that experience.
Right.
And then you will be able to transcend it, because I guarantee you, just like the guy in Pearl Harbor, somebody did not have his perspective. And you have to find that guy and find out how he did it. Just like somebody who figured out how to fucking rewire their fucking electric in their house. Like act as an electrician. You have to just find that guy and just watch his YouTube channel and figure out how he did it. There's a way, there's a thinking, there's a method. Find that fucking method for whatever it is that you're going through. Don't just reach out to people and then find a few answers that don't work and then give up. There is an answer. There is a way to overcome that thing. I guarantee you. I'm not fucking around on this one. No matter what it is, there's a way to overcome it. You just have to find that way. Be very clear about what you're looking for. And I think let's end it on that.
All right.
All right, guys.